Hello and welcome. My name is Rhonda Moore. I'm a practice lead in science and innovation at the Institute on Governance, a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank located in Ottawa, Canada. As we enter into December with the new year around the corner, it's traditional to take stock and set some goals for the coming year. Today, I'm joined by IOG President Toby Fyfe for a conversation on this exact topic. It's been a year for the books, from a renewal of the civil rights movement in North America to climate change to the global COVID-19 pandemic to the economic slowdown. 2020 has thrown a lot at us. Let's first start with some reflections on the year that's been. Toby, what do you take away from 2020?
Let me say welcome to Hindsight 2020, which always means you can see the past with the most terrifically clear lenses as ever. And you have given an incredible reference to the kind of challenges we faced over the last year. Look, every pundit and every journalist and every commentator is going to be going through that shopping list and adding to others as they look back with 2020 hindsight in the past year. So let me just take it from the perspective of the Institute on Governance, an organization, as you said, focused on public governance. And I think there are two areas I'd like to explore. The first, government itself, and the second, our own institution, the Institute on Governance. So for government, I take one main lesson from this year, and that is that government provides value and that government can do it. In this country, just think about the unparalleled cooperation between the three levels of government as they attempted to deal with this pandemic and have moved from where we were in March 2020 to where we are today. Again, 2020 hindsight, nothing is perfect, but really, I think it was an incredible demonstration of the value that government brings to citizens and their ability to deal with the crises that they faced, specifically, obviously, in this case, the pandemic. The second thing I want to reference is the Institute itself. So look, we are a not-for-profit, we are a charity, as you pointed out, but frankly, in terms of day-to-day, we are your classic small business. And in March, when the doors were shut as a result of the pandemic, we were your classic small business. And I have to say, I would argue that the IOG and all of its team has adjusted to the realities in an incredible way. And that is a huge tribute to the management team and a huge tribute to every single individual who works in the organization and who works with the organization. And for that, I would very quickly say thank you. But honestly, we have done so well that in a sense, we are almost stronger now than we were at the time of the pandemic. So those are my two lessons that I take away from my 2020
Wonderful.
hindsight.
Wonderful. So with those lessons in mind, what governance priorities would you recommend for Canada's public service and for the IOG in 2021?
Well, recommending is always a difficult thing, and I'm very hesitant to do that. I'd like to explore your question in two ways. I think there are two trends, if you like, that we've got to watch for. One is the desire for normalcy, and the other is the risk of complacency. So let me start with the first. The desire for normalcy, the risk is that we, government, citizens, everybody, Institute of Governance, will define normal as going back to the way things were, which leads you then to the risk of complacency, which says if we don't adapt and innovate continuously as the circumstances continue to unfold, then we run the risk of not being able to get there, if you like, when we allegedly get out of the woods. So if you're saying recommendations for government, let me just suggest that the risk for government is that it doesn't see the signals as it struggles so hard to deal with the immediate of the crises. For example, there are many Canadians who feel left out, who feel marginalized, and this leads to anti-democratic feeling. Think of the anti-vaxxers, think of the anti-maskers, just as two small examples, perhaps, of those who don't feel that government speaks for them. I think also there's a loss of a shared agenda. There was definitely a shared agenda in March, April. I don't think we have it now. And I think there's the sense of a lack of trust. I like to say that trust is the currency of governments. And like all currencies, it fluctuates. It was very high. All the indicators said so in March, April, but it's starting to drop again. And I think governments need to watch for those signals. The complacency dimension for government is that it needs to learn from the pandemic. And perhaps if it gets too complacent, it won't. Couple of examples. I think government has a huge opportunity to rethink risk. They took a lot of risks in the pandemic, but the question is, as we move to a more stable world, perhaps, how are we going to define risk, which I would argue historically has been probably one of the biggest challenges for governments being innovative and moving forward? How are we going to enable our institutions digitally? How are we going to deal with an incredible number of the workforce? And I don't just mean the public servants who are working at home and are going to be doing so for some time. How are we going to adapt to the demands now for, I'll broadly call it, diversity and inclusion? But most important, how are we going to prepare Canadians for the future? Especially, again, I reference those who feel left out and feel marginalized. We mustn't forget those. And if I'm looking at the IOG, here's the risk. The risk for us is that we assume we will go back to a normal in which, just to give an example, our in-person classrooms are full and business is just as it was a year ago. And that we therefore don't continue to retool for an, ambivalent future, but one that I hope will open up a lot more possibilities. Because I will predict in the short foreseeable future, we will continue to focus on working from home. But secondly, that we will need to build our digital capacity so that we can be competitive in both our learning programs and in our advisory work.
So that's a lot of things to be mindful of, to look out for, a number of risks to be watchful of. And so let's turn that on its head a little bit. What opportunities do you see for the public sector and then, of course, for IOG?
For the public sector, I think the biggest opportunity is to rethink things. It is an institution that has essentially been unchanged in 40 years. And yet, think of the pressures that are pushing on it that we've just described. I think the second opportunity is to reach out to marginalized communities. And that's in the context of diversity, in the context of economic disparity, and to build the trust to ensure the relevance of our institutions and, frankly, the relevance of democracy in the 21st century. And I would say about government, remember, there is no rule saying that just because you're big, you will stay the same forever. I love to quote Jack Welch, this former CEO of General Electric, who said, if change on the outside is faster than change on the inside, then the end is near. So that's, I think, the opportunity for government. It's a carpe diem moment. Seize it to think about what you are doing, what your service proposition or your value proposition is, and ensure that the public service and its agencies and departments as an institution continues to provide value to Canadians and continues to be relevant to them. And for the IOG, I think we have focus on our specialty, on public governance. And we continue to develop the products and services that will help governments improve their capacity so that, back to my point, they can maintain the trust of citizens in their institutions and, frankly, in democracy itself. And we have to continue to focus on our people. Look, we're not a huge organization, absolutely, but everyone in the IOG needs to feel that they can contribute based on their abilities and their interests. And that, I think, is our future going forward.
Well, I think if I was to sum up this conversation, I would say just because we did it this way doesn't mean we need to keep doing it this way. It sounds like lots of opportunity in 2021 for growth, for change, for new ideas, and I find that really exciting. So to our viewers out there, we wish you a very happy holiday and a healthy new year.
Take care. Thank you.